Okay, can you hear me? All right. So last time we talked about the standard C++ template. We went over very quickly for the first one about vector, which is essentially an array, but you don't have to worry about to set up the range, and you use this pretty much like you use array. So this is an example for using vector. And today I'd like to cover the second one, which is the map. And the reason I like to introduce map, because map is very useful for handling things like a search based on some kind of key value pair. So essentially what map is doing is that you can think about map is not really an array. It doesn't have an index, so you don't have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that is what array is doing. You have a monotonically increasing index for every single element. And map has two important properties. Number one, map is index or search by a keyword, pretty much like a JSON. That's number one. Number two about map is very unique, is that map, you might have a multiple entry with the same keyword. So for example, if you type the keyword search engine, say UC Davis, or you search the keyword for ecs36b on search engine, you actually find out there are multiple entries. There's so many entries associated with one particular keyword. And that's exactly map is trying to provide you to do. So you can actually already see how we can use this template to build a very simple search engine based on whatever map already provided. Okay, so that's map. So we're going to look at two things. So in fact, sorry, three things. Number one, how to declare a map. If you remember, when we declare a vector, we just need to provide what is the data type for the elements in the vector. But in map, we need two things. One is we still need that. How do you actually? What's the data type of the object that being stored in the map? So by the way, you think about map, you always think about key value pair. You have a key, you have a value. It's just the value has to be all the same type in the map, not like a JSON. JSON key value pair, you could have key is always a string and value could be anything. So that's one thing. Of course, you still have to declare what is the type of the element that you're going to store in the map. But the second thing is that you're also going to specify the type for the key. So this is also different from JSON. In JSON, the key must be a string. But in map, it could be anything. You could actually use any type of thing as the key. That's kind of the difference. So the first thing we need to see is, well, how do you actually declare a map in using the standard template library provided by C++? So number two, you need to worry about is, well, then how do I actually insert element into the map? Because if I declare a container, which is going to put a lot of this kind of key value pair, I need to know how to put it in. And the third thing is, well, how do I actually get it out? For example, I actually provide a keyword UC Davis, and there are 5 entries. How do I actually get to that? How do I actually retrieve one after the other? And how does the result pass back? So this is the three things. Once you know the three things, you can actually start develop a very interesting application based on that. So I'm actually going to use the search engine example to show you how you can actually, based on the map, to do this. So the first thing I'm going to show you is, well, how do you, I hope you can see this. Let me make it a little bit bigger. So I actually has, I use a 3 map. I'm going to only use 1 map too for this. I use map for a lot of things. We try to search a person, try to search a VSID, try to search the post. So I'm going to only talk about the first one, it's called PostMap. So let me tell you what PostMap is. So each of the posts is essentially a Facebook or a social media discussion, which is contain a post, the main message, and all the reactions, all the likes, and all the comments, and all the likes to those comments, and a bunch of things that's actually contained in your homework 5, homework 6, and homework 7. So that's called PostMap. So because I need to search through this PostMap, so I create a keywords that's actually binded to that. So I actually store all my posts, both in file system, which I'm actually going to talk about that later this week about, well, how do I actually store a post on file, which is a persistent way of doing this, and how do I store in the memory? But PostMap at this moment show you here is a memory concept. So I'm actually store all the posts that's actually ready for my search. That's actually put it in the memory. And so I declare that as PostMap. So let me actually see the first thing. How do I actually declare a map? So the beginning part, you should be familiar with that, is std color map. That's how you declare. You want to specify, you want to use the map template. And as we see that every single template, when you want to replace the template's code, you have to provide the in between the smaller sign and greater than sign. In between there, you specify the type that associate with that. So if you remember, when we talk about std vector, we only need to put one thing in between that bracket, in between here. But now we have to have 2 things. I mean, the reason I said that earlier is because map provide a key value pair. So the first thing is going to be the type of the key. So over here, overall general, when I use map, most of them is actually to be string, because that's the most natural way we would like to use map. So that's why when you see the map, the first one is usually a string, some kind of element for you to use the string to do the search. And that's the map. And then the second element represents what kind of object or what kind of the basic type or whatever you're going to put it inside the map. And to be honest with you, it doesn't make sense if the second element is a basic type. Usually, if you want to search something which is a basic type, you probably use other data structure. You usually use map to do something which you really want to search based on the index. And usually that is much easier to use a more complicated object scenario that you will put it in. Okay, so the second element is a pointer to a post. You can see now I actually link a keyword and a pointer to a post. Okay, this is another thing. The reason I put pointer instead of, you probably see I use pointer a lot in this implementation. And the reason I use a pointer, or at least I should use a reference, either is a pointer reference, because I could have a post or any of the searchable content, and they will have a lots of different keys. So if I actually put in a key with some element that, depending on the standard template implementation, that you might waste a lot of memory if you don't use a pointer or reference over there. I want all the entry in the map with a different key, but pointing to the same element. They will be just using just pointer to that element. So when I update the element, yeah, all of them will get updated. All right, so that's why this is a map. This is declaration of map. So there are 3 elements, of course. Number 1 is you have to say std map, and then you have that between small sign and bigger than, greater than. You have to have specified 2 types. Number 1 is what's the type for the key, and second one, what is the data type for the value. And then of course after that greater than sign is the identifier. You declare that post_map is going to be such kind of post map I will be using in this program. Okay, so that's a declaration. Any question? All right, let's actually look at how I actually use it, how I actually insert it. Okay, so to insert an element to the map is actually fairly simple. To insert it just like the way you do JSON. So you can see that this is the way I actually assign, because I actually, for example, here I assign based on the ID field. Whatever ID you have, I actually insert to the map. But you can have anything you want. But anyway, inside here, sorry, hold on 1 second. Okay, in between, this is the post map we just declared. Let me just copy this line and put it here. No, I missed that one. Here. So this is the way to use that declaration. So you basically insert any kind of string over there. I mean, the example I showed you earlier is I pulled out a string from JSON, and I basically say as string, so that's actually replace whatever XYZ is. So I just say post that particular string, n is equal to whatever element I would like to insert, which is a post pointer, and that will just very easy for me to. It's almost as easy as the JSON programming when you actually insert a key value pair. So this part, the std map is exactly the same, like the way we handle the JSON object. Okay, so that's number 1. So now I'm actually going to, well, how do I actually find the element? So I know how to put it in. So now I want to actually try to get it out. How do I do that? Okay, I'm going to first tell you a condition. This is this line. Let me get this thing out of here first. Okay, here I have 2 elements I want to show you. So in PostMap, you actually can find something you call find, and you can find the next one. using the iterator. So what happened here is that the first one, you just say PostMap find XYZ. This basically helps you to find the first element from the map. So there are multiple, by the way, it could be one, it could be multiple, but this is actually the syntax for you use find, try to retrieve it. It's fairly simple to do that. But the thing is that you need to know whether there is, number one, maybe there's no such element that's actually available in there. So when you do find, you actually will reach the end. That's why you use PostMap dot to the end. So this is actually going to give you have reached the end of the whole map. And therefore, you know you already exhaustively get rid of every single one from your map. Okay, so that's the way you can actually insert it, and then you can actually find it, and you can actually check whether you already retrieve every single one of the elements. You actually basically go through this process to do find, and then eventually you will actually get everything out. Any question? Yes. Uh-huh. It will automatically compare. It's a good question. When I use map, I always use the standard std string. I think it will. The compiler, it doesn't allow me to use this way. It will probably throw an error warning. But yeah, it will. It should. Usually, string will be automatically converted. Okay. Any other question? Okay, that's good. So now, I think I actually teach you the basic, so you can know this. I don't want to give you a more complicated cases that you can use the map, but this is the most commonly way for you to actually use this data structure to construct a lot of things. So I'm going to use the remaining time to actually really talk about how to apply this concept to really build a search engine like this. No, I want to use this one. Sorry, this is, yeah, I will use this one. Okay, so we have been working on this mapping between the JSON world and C+ world for a while, both in class and also your homework, especially homework assignment number 5. I asked you to do something we call dumbj, which is allow you to retrieve from this side is representing a set of C++ class that represent a typical social media interaction, and how do you actually generate into this JSON format, which is represent exactly the same information. And for homework 5, you implement dumbj, which is going from the C++ world to the JSON world. And for homework 6 is actually to be similar. You will have a reference implementation, but the JDump function has not been implemented. So you're going to implement that JDump function and then test it with our test cases. Then you will know whether you have done that successfully. So essentially, what you need to do as an example, no, this is actually not a good example. This is the example I'm actually looking at. So essentially, what you have is that you take this function. This line is essentially take the MD message, and then this is actually, I write it down here, it's a JSON to post. But actually, this was an older version. The newer version over here should be my post pointer dot JDOM. Let me actually just change it. I should have changed this a while ago. Sorry about that. Let me actually change this slide. This should be my host pointer to the JDOM. Now I feel better this way. I forgot to change this part as well. Let me copy this to the second. I want to I'll change add here. Okay. Okay, so with this, when you take a message like such as the file that we provide you earlier in the lecture, you will see a really complicated JSON. By the way, that one JSON looks complicated, put it in one single slide, but that particular JSON is pretty small in terms of representing a social interaction or any kind of interaction you can imagine. So what you can do is just put that in as a parameter, that JSON object. It should convert it automatically into the myPost pointer. It will actually go into the empty myPost pointer. After you've done that, this one will have the C++ representation. After you've done this JDOM myPost, you actually can dump it using your homework assignment number 5. It should convert it back to the equivalent information of my V message. So if you do this successfully, it's actually very simple for you to check, because if this one is a JSON and this JSON, they are equivalent. And I will show you how you actually compare JSON very easily. In homework 6, the first program, in fact, teach you how to do that comparison. And then you know your conversion is absolutely correct. And so you can actually do this bi-direction. And if you can do that, there is a lot of things, I should say, that with this tool. In fact, last year, several group of students essentially leveraging this tool to build their project. They can actually use this to build for example, somebody want to build an email or online forum that's actually related to a discussion. You can actually just use this tool function to do that. So there are a few things about object-oriented programming I finally can talk about if you know the concept about JDOM and DUMP-J. So you can actually do this a few things. Number one, you can have what we call object mobility. So essentially, what is object mobility? You have an object using neighbors, but you want this object to present in a different location. Say you want to move it to somewhere in Australia. And what you can do is that you can do a dump-J to dump the object. And then now you have a JSON format. Now you send the JSON to Australia by internet or by airplane. So depending on what's your situation, I could, if it's completely internet connected, I can of course send it as an email, as an SFTP, as a web browser. I can actually send it to the other location. But the other thing, which is you probably start thinking about our final project, that if you walk to a device, which is a Raspberry Pi, and you actually download on your smartphone. And the thing is that you don't have to directly send it to the other side. You can actually carry it. When you travel, you fly to Australia, and there is also a Raspberry Pi device, like what we have at UC Davis. But that device also doesn't have internet, so which means that you cannot send it directly. You have to physically go there, and when you're close to that device using Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, then you can upload. So you can actually use this basic format to do a lot of interesting object mobility. By the way, if you come to my final project discussion, I will probably give you more idea along the line. The key issue here is that, well, how do we still have the convenience of the internet, but maintain a physical proximity between people and people's movement to enhance the meaningfulness of the application. So that's why I'm saying that it's important that we leverage that physical assets of the information to be able to do something which is provide better value compared to today's system. So that's the first thing, object mobility. The second thing, which is you should start thinking about this, is called persistent object. So usually, an object-oriented course programming, we usually don't teach you how to do persistent object. So number one, what is a persistent object? A persistent object means that the object will still survive when your program either crash or you actually finish the program. So when you write the program A.out, you execute, you create a bunch of objects, but as long as you press Control-C or you try to exit, all the objects are gone. So you have to have a way to retrieve the object from the last point it was crashed or it was ended, so you can continue. So basically, we're saying that the object is actually have a lifetime perspective instead of just transient. Means that you use it and then it's gone, and you have to reestablish everything again. You can imagine how useful to have something which is persistent object. So what you can do, persistent object, is before you crash or periodically, you should do a dump J. So you have a C++ object that from time to time you should produce into a string, and then you save as a file. For example, this is the file. That's actually one of the students. You can see that the middle number, that was a VSID. That the student's VSID with a post ID. So then that is his content. It's there. And so when he finished running the program, before he quit his program, it would just do a dump J into a JSON format. By the way, if you don't do dump J, you try to save it directly using C++. It will have problem because C++, even between WSL and MacBook, the memory layout, everything, it could be very different. 32-bit computer and 64-bit computer is going to save different memory layout. So if you want to save a C++ object, it's possible, but it's not easy for portability, for interoperability. But JSON is a very interoperable. So I basically just converted to JSON. It's a standard format. And then I use dump J to move it to the file. And when I do JDump, which is your homework assignment number 6, I just convert it back to my object. When I return, I will just convert it back. I have it. And also, you can actually build a browser that's actually based on this. So how do I actually look at your data? This quarter, I didn't focus on that because that is essentially the web report we're talking about. So essentially, you have a content, which is a C++. And how do I actually view it from the web perspective? It's not that easy because everybody is going to have a different kind of C++ object. How do I actually using a web browser to see the internal of your object-oriented program, which have a bunch of C++ objects. So what you can do is you can actually use a JSON browser, which is actually understand the JSON format. You can imagine it's much easier. In fact, most of the browsers today already understand JSON. They can actually display the JSON in a generic way. So that's actually very well. And the thing is that I won't get into the last part. The last part is really very cool for your application, because after you can do this, what you actually start thinking is about the information ownership. So I said, well, if I have a JSON on my smartphone, which is directly from my C++, and this JSON represents my communication. So I talk about Facebook. I talk about a journal I actually try to keep about how I interact with you, with others. So every piece of interaction is actually can be converted into a JSON. For example, I can have a key as a lecture, and then the object is all my communication with all the students here. So I can actually keep tracking and have the full JSON that's keeping in my smartphone, because this is mine, and you're doing the same thing as well, because we are actually sharing this content. So you can see that this is a JSON going to be growing, and it's going to be storing, and you use JSON and dumpj. It helps you to manage in many different formats to merge them together. And a few of students used to be, if you want to, some of you actually come to this class, here this part, some of you come to the other class, and what you can do is just merge your JSON together, like what I asked you to do for homework assignment number 6. You essentially just create a combined copy about all your content, and then you will be able to share with each other. Okay, so there's a lots of application that you can actually imagine with this very simple capability to do this kind of conversion from one side to the other. Okay, so now I'm going to start to talk about this is homework assignment number 6, essentially. What we want you to do is implementing, oh, sorry, this is homework assignment number 7 for you, because there are two things. After you can do the JDump and dumpj. So dumpj is homework assignment number 5. JDump is homework assignment number 6. Your homework assignment number 6. But this quarter, I actually, sorry, I haven't updated this. This should be for you is homework assignment number 7 server.cpp. So essentially what we're asking you to implement is two things. It's between a client server and using JSONRPC. So the JSONRPC, in fact, is fairly simple. This is a JSONRPC. For you is ecs36b homework 3. Remember, you saw something looks like this. So this essentially specifies how the client and the server, they need to communicate with each other. So the way they implement the two functions, one is called update. So update, you essentially upload a JSON, a post JSON to the server, and the search is I actually provide a keyword, try to retrieve all the JSON. That's actually match that keyword. So that's the two functions. One is the update, and one is the search. So again, this is the RPC, JSON RPC specification with these two functions. This will be given to you. And essentially what you have is in the client that you have a post. This is the post example that will provide for you for test cases, but you can probably do similar thing. So what we have is that you have a dumpj, sorry, you actually have this post, And then you basically generate using dumj, so you can have that post converted to a JSON string. And then with JSONRPC, you just send that post string over here. And over here, you do JDump. And after you've done JDump, that you actually be able to save it in the map. That's why earlier we talked about the map. The map is really for you to convert that to the C++ object, then you can save it in. For persistent object, you also do this. Persistent object, after you check the JDump, and you check everything that's actually correct, including the merge. Because, for example, this could be an update for existing posts. So you're going to do a merge on the server side, and then you're going to put the result into a file, which is the file I showed you earlier. And this file is going to be persistent because it is on your file. Okay, so that's, you can see. In fact, this is basically what the modern search engine is doing. You think about that, is you have a content, you push it, you do some check, you extract the keyword. By the way, the keyword part in this homework is very simple. I'm not going to ask you to do very complicated keyword match, just very simple keyword match, keyword construction, and then you will go to the file. Okay, and you will send some acknowledgement back, of course. But let me actually show you the this one is the same, but I want to, okay. I'm going to skip this part. Okay, you have something called merge post. I actually don't want to talk about that right now. I want to talk about the search. Okay, so after a while, you're going to have a bunch of posts in your memory as well as in your file. The file looks like this, and they are all stored in a map. Now you actually want to do a search. So the way you do a search using the second function called search. Second RPC, JSON RPC function. And inside that search, you just type in keyword with a keyword, just a key phrase. You just put in there. So in this case, I'm just saying the keyword is Patrick Jane. Okay, I mean, I don't know. You know who Patrick Jane is? Anybody watch that? Oh, some of you watch that. It's something which is most of the show is actually Sacramento. This is called Mentalist. If you're interested over the break, I think that was an interesting one. I mean, during pandemic, I watched a lot of this kind of FBI, CIA, or I forgot what I call in California. So at that time, I was using Patrick Jane as an example. So he's a character, very, very interesting character. So I'm actually using that keyword to try to do the search. So over here, I'm actually going to find using the map. I found there are two entries that actually contain Patrick Jane. And so what I did is the result is going to be an array of JSON, but I have a two post JSON, so number 1 and number 2. So there are two posts in my search engine that's actually that contain those keywords using the map. And then once you get back here, so I have this, and once you get back here, sorry about that, just to let you know what the output looks like. The output looks like this. So you will have an array, which is a count of 2, this part. Just like the standard way of doing this, we have a 2. This is the return JSON from the search. And we have a data, which has 2 elements, and the first JSON post, the second JSON post. So what you need to do is that you actually take one at a time, and then you actually do JDump. When you do JDump, you actually convert that back to your C++ object. Then you can actually basically play around with this. So after search engine, you're actually going to have this kind of picture that both of them have the same result. Okay. All right, so this is essentially what we asked you to do for homework assignment number 7. A very simple function to kind of complete the whole picture about how you can manipulate JSON and the sequence of object for practical application to represent it, to actually convert it, and then to update your server, and also have a way to retrieve. So after doing this, you actually will have a lot of possible application. You can use this paradigm to do things. Okay, I think I'm going to ask you any question for what I have presented so far. So I plan to do, for today's discussion, I plan to do a demo about everything I said here. So you can actually have a better idea about how it works programming. By the way, both homework 6 and 7, you work together as a team. Okay, the other thing I should say, when you have a team come to meet with me, hopefully this week, I already met a few teams last week. I think the meeting went well, but I want to summarize a few things I'd like you to know. If you have some idea, please think something that is, I would say, try to think about something more aggressive, and don't try to think about something you think you can implement. I'd like you to think something big, because how I'm going to grade is actually based on how brave you are to embrace the challenge. We're going to work together, and I believe I will have a lot of office hour this week and next week. So I can be there, me or the TA will be there to help you as much as you can to actually be able to build things very quickly. That's number one. I want you to be brave. I want you to be creative. Don't be constrained. The number two, I do want to mention that this is the teamwork. It's very important, at least for the meeting. I want everybody to be there. I mean, I don't want there one student cannot make it. If you cannot make it, we can use a Zoom. The important thing for your team is try to schedule the right time. Because it's part of the teamwork, it's a part of education. We work together, it will be good for the team spirit that everybody needs to be there. If a team, just want to tell you, this is the preventive. If a team has a member who is not participating, if I found out about that, and I actually will ask questions, I can find out whether people really understand you're on the same page, at least for the concept. If I found out about that, I will provide differential grading. Means that some of the team member will receive higher grade than others. That's actually possible, but most of the cases, I will give the same grade for everybody if I feel everybody has participated. But if some of the member didn't participate as equivalent as others significantly, I'm going to provide, because I feel that's fair to, I mean, it's both fair to the grading, but also it's fair to the team to actually work together. Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop here. Any other question about, oh, final announcement. I'm going back to academic search right after this. We have office hour until 1 p.m. Then I can probably take a short break, and then I go to the discussion. I mean, this week I like to spend as much time as possible, and we will have office hour tomorrow as well. So I will come here. Tomorrow is probably only also from 11 to, sorry, from 10 to, let's do tomorrow 11 to 2. That's probably easy because I have a faculty meeting right after that. Okay, so this week, basically every day we have office hour. I mean, Thursday, if you want to have our office hour, I'm okay with that as well, okay? But I hope you can enjoy your Thanksgiving holiday. Yeah.